sermon, let me also recommend that if what you're missing is the great singing that we do every Sunday, there are links for our 3 hymns that were scheduled for this morning. The hymns have the lyrics. So if you want to sing along, or if you just want to sit back and take in the beautiful music. We remember one of our hymns this morning was that favorite, the old rugged cross. So take advantage of that and listen to the great music that we have for you. So, we're back on Golgotha again, on the hill. Jesus is exhausted, beaten, in great pain, and now crucified. Nails in his wrist and in his ankles, and hanging on a cross, waiting for asphyxiation to take him away. We remember that for him to talk, he would have to push on the nails on his wrist and on his ankles to be able to get the breath, to be able to get a good breath and be able to speak. And so here we find ourselves with Jesus. His first reactions to all of this was forgiveness. And those soldiers at his feet, the crowd in front of him, the religious leaders up on top, his first reaction to them was, "Forgive them, Father." And then, to the criminal who confessed his sins and recognized Jesus as his Savior, was told, "Today we will be in paradise." So now we come to the third phrase, the third word. To his mother. Can you imagine what this must have been like for Mary? This teenage girl who was visited by an angel and told, "You have been chosen to be the mother of the Messiah." This woman who, when her child was just a few days old, was told at the circumcision that you will feel a sword pierce you. Oh, she's remembering that today as she feels that. This mother who's watched this wonderful, beautiful boy grow up, a man in love with God, a man who does miraculous things, hanging on that tree. How she would wish she could run up there and rip him off that tree and take him home. And Jesus, this woman who has been with him, who has loved him and cared for him throughout all these days, we can imagine the anguish that was being experienced by both son and mother. I'm wondering if what motivated the same might have been the verses that are found just before these verses. It's about the Roman guards and how they had divided up Jesus' belongings, but when they got to the tunic, the beautiful, seamless tunic, they decided it wouldn't be worth ripping it apart, so they were going to bet on who got it. And maybe as Jesus looked down and he saw that tunic, you see, it was tradition in the Jewish culture that the mother would make the tunic. Then maybe he looks down at that tunic and he sees it, and he's reminded of all the love his mother has given him. And he looks out and he sees her. She's there with sister, perhaps sister-in-law. Clopas seems to have been Joseph's brother. Clopas and his son later become leaders of the Christian faith in Jerusalem. Mary Magdalene, and now a lot of us get this Mary confused and kind of try to blend all the women in the New Testament into one woman. Mary was relieved of 7 spirits by Jesus. But this is not the woman who had ill repute and came to bathe Jesus' feet in the oils and wash them with her hair. This is not that Mary. This is not the woman who was brought to be stoned to death. This is the Mary who had 7 spirits taken from her by Jesus and continued to follow. This is the Mary who saw the very first person who saw the resurrected Jesus. This is the Mary who gave the first witness that Jesus is alive. And so these 3 Marys are there, accompanied by John, the disciple. Where are the other disciples? Where are they? Hiding in fear? But John is there. And Jesus looks out and he sees his mother. And he knows he needs to take care of her. And Joseph has obviously passed. And so the responsibility of his mother and his brothers and sisters came upon Jesus. And with his death, who will care for Mary? Well, generally one would say it would be the other brothers. But instead he looks to John and says, John, your mother. And so that's who's here in this crowd that Jesus speaks to. But I believe that we have 3 lessons for us today in 2020 from these verses. The first one, in the midst of everything, saving the sins of the world, of all time, the crucifixion experience, all that Jesus has been through, and yet he takes a moment to care for his mother. I think the lesson for us there is that sometimes we think God is too busy with the big things in this world. God is too busy with the virus. He's too busy with the wars across the world. He's too busy trying to solve the division in Americans' life. He's too busy trying to solve the problem with that United Methodist group in America. What to do? As though he's not busy. He's so busy that he doesn't want to hear from you. This tells us he does. That he cares about each and everything, your concerns, your worries, your heartaches, your anxieties, your hopes, your wishes, your joys. He wants you to come to him. So come to God through Jesus. That's what he wants, I think, is one of the things that is being said. Your mother, your son. In the midst of all this, Jesus says, no, but I still care about this. Come to me. Our second lesson, I think, goes to the question as to why John? Why not a brother? I think this is a huge lesson for us. Who is John? John is the church. John is a bigger family than they've ever had, than Mom ever had. It's a bigger family. And so we are that family. And so God comes to us and says, I know you, just like I knew John. I know you. I know who you are. I know what you can do. Take care of Mary. Take care of all those in need, in pain, in loneliness. Take care of them. And the third lesson that I think we can draw from these verses, and if you'll allow me a little licensing to go beyond what's in the verses, when he says, your mother, your son, perhaps he's also saying, your father, your Abba, and dad, your sons, your daughters. Romans 8:15 reminds us, you didn't receive a spirit of slavery to lead you back again into fear, but you received a spirit that shows you were adopted as his children. With this spirit, we cry, Abba, Father. And so I believe, in a sense, Jesus is reminding us that we belong. We belong to God the Father. Timothy Paul Jones is an author, and he co-wrote a book called Proof, Finding Freedom Through the Intoxicating Joy of Irresistible Grace. And in it he tells a story of his adopted 8-year-old daughter. Now this girl had been adopted before, and the family she was with had gone to Disney World a number of times, but they never took her. They just took her biological children, and they'd come home with all the great stories of the Magic Kingdom. But she had to justify in her mind why she didn't go, and she felt she wasn't good enough. She'd been bad. She'd done something wrong. And so when Mr. Jones had discovered this, he thought, well, we're going to go to Disney World. So the next time he found himself in the southeastern part of the United States, he took his family to go to Disney World. So when he told this young girl that was the plan, very strange change in her. She would steal a cookie. She could have asked for dessert and would have gotten it. She said harsh things to her brothers and sisters. She was acting out in a number of ways. And a couple of weeks before they were ready to go, Mr. Jones called for her to come to him, and they talked. And of course, he was expecting, oh, I've been so bad, I'm not going to get to go to Disney World, am I? And he said, Grace shut his mouth up, because he was about ready to say, if you don't change your behavior, you're not going. That would have been the wrong thing to say, he realizes. And he didn't say it. He just said, whose family do you belong to? And she said, yours. He said, then you're going to Disney World. On their trip to Disney World, in the car, in the hotel rooms, she continued acting up. And so they finally got to Disney World. She had a great day. And that night in the hotel room, he sat with her. She had a great time. And she said to him, Daddy, I finally got to go to Disney World. But it wasn't because I was good. It's because I'm yours. And I think that's the message that God's trying to give us. Through his grace, it's not because we're good. It's because we're his. We belong to God. 1 John 3:1 says, see what kind of love the Father has given to us, and that we should be called God's children. And that is what we are. God doesn't love you because you were good, but because you were his. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy